Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and proud Tampa Catholic graduate, the one and only Eric Henry of Horns247.com. We are previewing Texas and Vanderbilt. They will kick it off Saturday at 11 a.m. right there at Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium after 42 days of being a nomad in the SEC, at Florida, in the Cotton Bowl for OU, in Lexington, Kentucky, and last weekend in Starkville, Mississippi. And Eric, Texas goes 3-1 on their road trip, if you will. And they're still in the mix in the SEC. Still one loss in SEC play. But here comes Diego Pavia and the Commodorables from Vanderbilt. Eric, how are you doing?
Chip Brown, I am happy to be back in the greater Austin, Texas area. Thank you to all of you who watched the Flagship live post-game reaction from Davis Wade Stadium. Thank you for bearing through the Wi-Fi issues. As I said, Wi-Fi is a little bit of a struggle there in Starkville. And I will say this, Chip, I want to say this for all Texas fans. This is year 2 in the SEC. Haven't had a full trip, a full swing through the league just yet, right? For those of you who did not make the trip, Starkville's great. Honestly, it's small to college town. We're not going to deny that, right? It is small. It is not easy to get to. But the fans, super hospitable. I've talked with some Texas fans who said that they felt welcomed on a football game day there. So certainly none of the, not because you didn't see any horns down. Of course, you saw that in the stadium. But in terms of the atmosphere around Davis Wade, around Starkville, Chip, very, very hospitable. So wanted to make sure to shout that out for Texas fans as they make the gauntlet through the SEC in years to come. But happy to be back in Austin, happy to be with stable Wi-Fi, and happy to be talking all things Texas football and basketball as well, Chip, because Texas men's basketball season getting ready to fire up here next week. So happy to dive into all things with you, my man.
Yeah. We got excitement. Texas women's basketball also approaching. Vic Schaefer was on the trip to Starkville, back to his old stomping grounds where he took the Mississippi State women's basketball program to 2 national championship games. Our friend Levon Whitaker of KXAN had a nice video of Steve Sarkisian walking up to Vic Schaefer, who already had a cocktail in his hand. And
Chip, if you take a look at the Texas football Twitter account, you'll see yours truly in the background. I don't know if you saw that picture, Chip. Hank.
There he is. There he was.
Our own Hank
right
Stout,
there.
Pointed. I'm right there in the background. Yeah. Chip, you mentioned it, so I'll set a little background there. Vic was holding court. That dude obviously, still maintains a residence there, but he is still a popular guy. It wasn't just Texas fans he was chopping it up with. There were Mississippi State fans who wanted to come say hello to the old head women's basketball coach. And yeah, Vic was having a good time pregame, and he went out of his way. The buses came out, and of course, Steve had plenty on his mind that morning as he was making his way to the visitors' locker room at Davis Wade Stadium. But Vic Schaefer went out of his way to say, "Hey, Steve," and they had a nice moment there. You mentioned Levon Whitaker at KXAN got the video. But yeah, they had a great moment there, and Vic was having a good time. So no, that was Vic Schaefer, still a man of the folks there in Starkville.
Yeah. Well, that was cool. Yeah, I guess we should start there. Steve Sarkisian had a lot on his mind going into the Mississippi State game. Diana Rossini reported at 9 a.m. on Saturday that she had heard representatives of Steve Sarkisian had been in touch with NFL decision makers, that Steve Sarkisian would be interested in possible job openings in the NFL, including the Tennessee Titans. And Steve Sarkisian reacted strongly after the game, saying that it pissed him off that one person could report something and the whole media world would take it as fact, Eric. His agent, Jimmy Sexton, CAA, Ed Marinowitz, put out a statement saying this is patently false. Nothing to see here. We'll see. But he has shot it out of the water at this point. And for 3 quarters against Mississippi State, it seemed comical that Steve Sarkisian would even be considered for an NFL head coaching job, Eric. But then the 4th quarter happened. We saw a point avalanche for this Texas team, which was averaging 16.8 points per game against Power 4 competition until that avalanche of points, 24 points in the 4th quarter. They outscore Mississippi State 31-7 down the stretch to win 45-38. But Arch Manning goes down with a concussion. He's in concussion protocol. We'll see how he progresses throughout the week and what the player availability reports look like, Eric. But Matthew Caldwell could be called upon. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Chip. Again, we covered a lot of the Mississippi State stuff in our live post-game reaction. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Still up on Horns247.com because there's an article there, but as well, all Horns247 social platforms and, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever podcast platform of your choice. But I'll just quickly add this couple things. I'll start with the morning and kind of make our way through to now Matthew Caldwell and, what may be his first career start at not the FBS level, but the Power 4 level. Of course, he started 5 games. Chip started at Iowa last year, right? So it's not like he hasn't played in big environments, came in at Florida, at Mississippi State. So we'll get there in a second. Chip, for those of you who are regular watchers and listeners, you're going to learn that Chip and I don't rehearse this. We don't really talk about what we're going to talk about ahead of time. So there are sometimes I have to give Chip a little bit of a warning on the fly. Chip, I am putting you in a spot. I don't know how you want to handle this, but this is where I'm going to start with Diana Rossini. The idea that Diana just made something up, right? You and I know that's not true. Like, there's no benefit for her to just make something up. As an NFL insider, there's no benefit to her to just say on a random Saturday, I'm going to make this up. Now, I'm not saying that Steve Sarkisian necessarily has NFL interest or vice versa. And as Chip said, I'd seen some, talk about, maybe Steve interest in the Miami job with Tua and Jalen Waddle. And through 3 quarters, it looked like you could have put Steve Sarkisian and Mike McDaniel as head coach in OC, and they wouldn't have found the end zone with a police escort. All right. So, take that for what it is. The timing of it, I think, probably is what ruffled the feathers of both Steve Sarkisian and Texas fans more than anything else, right? This is a Saturday. It's a game day. It's a road game. It's the last, as Chip said, of a 42-day stretch away from Austin without a home game. They're tired. They're heading into Starkville, a place is going to be a hostile environment. And Chip, it was hostile. And I don't mean hostile in a negative sense. I mean the cowbells are real. They ring and ring and ring. And the last thing that Steve Sarkisian wants to have to deal with is now I got to address this with my team after I spend, I being Steve Sarkisian, all week trying to prep these guys to mentally get right. Who can't understand why Steve Sarkisian would be not just frustrated, incensed that would come out? As you said, we will see, time will tell. I do not believe for a second that Diana just decided, all right, I'm just going to make this up right now. Maybe she was talking to someone within CAA. We all can, those of us who work in this business know, likely not Jimmy Sexton or Ed Marinowitz, but someone in the building, right? And got to this point. Again, time will tell. I just kind of want to put a cap on that because I think the concept that like this just is just some magical thing made out of thin air. That's just, without going on a rant, I know people like to think that that's what we do, Chip. There's no benefit of that. So I will pause there and kind of let you opine as someone who has done this, a veteran of, 35 years doing this job.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get the timing of it. I I don't know how Steve Sarkisian and Jimmy Sexton go about their daily rapport. Could someone from CAA have been feeling out the situation? And then NFL personnel get wind of it. Diana Rossini, hears about it. I'm not the only one who'd heard about, possible interest in the Miami Dolphins. So I think the timing of it was what was awkward here. And so, Steve Sarkisian couldn't really respond to it because he's trying to get his team ready for a game. So it sat there for several hours. But it almost feels like a moot point at this point. Now, winning that game at Mississippi State certainly allowed Steve Sarkisian to let out a celebration. I don't think the likes we've seen. Yeah. He's jumping around, pumping his fists, hugging players, hugging Cooper and Helen Manning after the game. So it was a wild day, and they got out of there with the dub. So winning cures a lot.
Winning cures a lot. I just want to add one other thing on that before I transition to Matthew Caldwell. I know the words in print. I wrote up what Steve Sarkisian had to say in denying that. And there were some folks, I don't know if you saw this, Chip, some folks said, well, that wasn't a denial, right? The words may read one way in print. If you were in that room, I, advise anyone to, here would be a cheap plug for the Longhorn Network app, right? Go watch the video. That was a denial if you were in the room, right? Sure, he did not use the words. This is, well, I believe is the statement, the agency statement did. Sure, he didn't say, I'm not taking the Tennessee Titans job, but that was a denial. So for anyone who may read the words in print and say, oh, well, you didn't deny it. If you were in that room, that was a denial. Now, on to Matthew Caldwell. And so I'll pass, the rock back to you, Chip. I think it says a lot about him to be able to step in, not just last week, but again, remember, Florida, Arch Manning loses helmet, right? So he's got to come out for a play. Arch Manning is sacked on the play. So it was a 2nd and 22.
2nd and 22.
2nd and 22. Steps in, first career snap against power competition in the swamp. Chip can tell you that place was loud. All right. Louder than the Mississippi State. Because obviously, they used the cowbells. They were using their voices in the swamp. And delivers a dime on an in-cut to Ryan Wingo for a first down as Texas is trying to find a game-tying touchdown. You have that. He steps in overtime. Mississippi State fans are thinking, all right, Arch Manning, they're not celebrating the injury, but they're like, all right, Arch is out. Maybe we can pick off this backup quarterback. Maybe we can force a strip sack, something. Nope. Delivers another dime to Emmett Mosley in the back of the end zone. If, for whatever reason, Chip, Matthew Caldwell has to start, here's what I feel comfortable with. The moment will not be too big for him. Is he Arch Manning? No, right? Like there's a reason he began his career at Gardner-Webb. And you know me, I covered Group of 5 football. You have gems, you have guys who go hit it. Look at Cam Ward, right? Cam Ward began his career at Incarnate Word. You have guys who slip through the cracks, especially
Diego Pavia.
Diego Pavia began his career at New Mexico State. If memory serves correct, I think Diego went to New Mexico Military Institute prior to going to New Mexico State, if memory serves me correct. So people slip through the cracks. But with that being said, is he Arch Manning? No. But can Texas win a game with Matthew Caldwell, Chip? Here's where I'll pass the rock back to you. I think even just over those, 2 snaps that he played against Power 4 competition, you've seen enough within him to say the moment won't be too big for him. Texas can win a game with Matthew Caldwell.
Yeah, what if Matthew Caldwell plays really well and Texas wins Saturday against Vanderbilt? That'll be a fun post-game conversation, if that indeed were to play out, Eric. This has been an odyssey for the Texas offense this season. It has not been pretty. There's still no identity, Eric, for this Texas offense. We are going into game 9 of 12. We are entering the final quarter of this 2025 college football season, and the Texas offense has no identity. It used to be penalties and Arch Manning running for his life. After the fourth quarter, every week you and I come on here and say, did they figure something out? They figured something out on offense? They ran the ball a little bit against Oklahoma. Quick passing game. Then they go back to the deeper passing game against Kentucky. It's a failure. The offensive line looks horrible against Kentucky. The offensive line was a little better against Mississippi State. And there was rotation at left guard. We saw Nick Brooks for 30 snaps, and we saw Connor Stroh for 70 snaps. They were both in the game for a brief time because DJ Campbell was out. So, but the running game was non-existent, Eric, and you wrote about that.
Yeah.
Arch Manning has gotten no help from the running game except the OU game. I mean, that's confounding.
The run game has been, quite frankly, abysmal, especially against Power 5 competition, Chip. I wrote it. It's up on the site right now. They're averaging 94.6 yards per game on the ground against Power 4 teams in 5 games. And that's including Arch Manning's production, right? So I think you have to say think. At this point, we know. Barring some sort of miraculous outburst, Steve Sarkisian stretch of having a 1,000-yard rusher in every season of his head coaching career is going to come to an end this year, right? When Travion Wiseman has 250-something yards on the ground. I had the number in front of me. I just lost it, Chip. But he's not over 300 yards on the ground this season, right? The thing that concerns me, and we can dive into this a little bit, it's twofold. One, you can get away with Arch using his legs as a runner, scrambling at times. But this 4-game stretch where you're facing run defenses, 3 of them whom are in the top 35. Georgia's ranked 11th in the nation. Vanderbilt's ranked 18th or 19th in the nation. And Texas A&M is ranked 30th.
18th, 101.9.
18th in the nation. And Georgia's a top 30 unit as well against the run. Using Arch Manning 5, 6, 7 times as a runner, Chip, in addition to the hits he's taking, in addition to his scrambles, that's not going to work. It just isn't. And that's something that I think, and I'm going to tie this all the way around here, but that's something I think you have to take into account. You and I didn't get a chance to talk about this yesterday at press availability. Does that play a factor, Chip, in whether you put Arch Manning out there? Because this kid is obviously going off a concussion, and he's been getting beat up week after week after week. Does that play a factor, right? Maybe that's something to ask Steve Sarkisian on Thursday. We talk with him via Zoom. But getting the running backs involved in the run game is crucial. It is huge. You talked about balance. You talked about identity. 2 things this offense hasn't had this year. They're going to need a run game to establish both of those things, to stay out of those 2nd and longs, 3rd and longs, and not end up in a game where you end up, Chip, where possessions are at a premium. You end up possibly down 10-0, 14-0, and you're not going to have 70 or 80 plays to come back. So this week, it's especially paramount. And it starts with the offensive line. It's not just the backs. We know that. But it's got to get fixed.
Yeah, I mean, look, this Vanderbilt team believes that they've got what it takes to be a college football playoff team. And Texas fans are waiting for Texas to play like that. They're waiting to see the Texas team that imposed its will last year and the year before that. And every week lately, it's turned into a white knuckle roller coaster ride. It appeared the body was toe tagged down 38-21. And then a series of minor miracles played out, including a 4th and 1 roughing the passer call that extended a touchdown drive that Texas absolutely had to have. And of course, the Ryan Niblett 79-yard punt return. I wrote an article going into the Mississippi State game saying, how long can Texas, hope for Ryan Niblett heroics. Well, one more week. It's been 3 weeks in a row for Ryan Niblett, which is awesome. And we wrote about what kind of clutch performances should Ryan Niblett be compared to throughout sports, because he's got limited opportunities. His team desperately needs him, and he is coming up with the goods, Eric. And so, Steve Sarkisian always likes to say, hey, we got to find different ways to win. Right now, they're winning with their special teams and their defense. And, of course, his side of the ball is the offense. And he keeps saying, we got to run it better. We got to run it better. And then, okay, how are you going to run it better? You've got an offensive line that looks like it doesn't practice at times. And then you've had a in and out revolving door running back. Now you've got both Quintravian Wisner, as of this moment, Texas fans, knock on wood, Quintravian Wisner and CJ Baxter at your disposal. So it's been incredibly frustrating. And Eric, Ryan Wingo, I mean, he had this great game, 5 catches, 184 yards receiving. If they would have lost that game, all we'd be talking about were his drops. He dropped a 3rd and 19 pass that would have gone for a first down. He dropped a 3rd and goal pass that would have gone for a touchdown. And they settled for a field goal on that drive. He does not feel like a wide receiver 1 to me, Eric. Does he to you?
No, Chip, I think that's an interesting point. And maybe I'm giving Wingo too much leeway. But I think, and listen, I got to point the finger at myself, right? I wrote in the offseason, I said it many places, that if Ryan Wingo had the amount of targets as Jeremiah Smith or Ryan Williams, he would be viewed in the same way, right? Because statistically, the numbers bared that out, that if you just gave him, the same number of targets, his numbers would be maybe not necessarily Jeremiah Smith spot on, but they'd be in the ballpark. But what you can't account for is a young player learning to play the game and to develop confidence, Chip. Ryan Wingo, Chip, I think you saw it. On that, what was it, the second play of the game that Wingo took the touchdown?
First
offense play. Okay, I'm just trying to put it all together here. I thought it was a 2-play drive, but I could be wrong. Nevertheless,
it was. Arch ran for a touchdown on
the second play. You're right. You're correct.
Goal from the 3.
You nailed it. You saw a guy. You saw all the athleticism. You saw the speed. You saw the power. You saw. Excuse me. Sorry. You saw everything that you would look for in that dynamic type of athlete, right? Chip, that's a guy who, when we talk about this with running backs all the time, that's a guy who at the high school level, you don't need to do anything. Just go be Ryan Wingo. Go be that. And you're going to be a 5-star prospect, right? It's a little more to it at college. The consistency, I think it's coming together. You asked me a direct question. Does he look like a wide receiver 1? The answer is no, but that doesn't mean that I don't think I still think he's this team's wide receiver 1. And I still think he is a wide receiver 1 in the very near future. But the consistency is there, Chip. It's like we could say the same thing. Does Arch Manning look like a 5-star prospect? At times he does. At times he doesn't, right? I think the same thing is applicable to Ryan Wingo in my mind, Chip.
Yeah, you had 2 drops from Wingo that you could almost credit him with 3. He dropped a 2nd and 9 pass. Quintravian Wisner had 2 drops. So there were 5 drops total in that game. So Arch Manning played really well down the stretch. And Eric, they played well in 2-minute offense. I mean, that's a dicey game to get into, because if you run tempo and you're not successful, you're killing your defense. And there are times where Texas goes fast and then they slow it down and they change speeds and all of that. But any other thoughts on the offense? Because I want to get into the fact that Pete Kwiatkowski brought blitz pressure when they were down 17, and it worked a lot. Anthony Hill, 2 sacks. Ethan Burke said it was on the same blitz that he got both sacks. We've not seen Pete. He's been content to rush 4 even in the Florida game, which drove me crazy with DJ Lagway on one leg. You're like, bring the heat. He didn't, and they lost. Against Mississippi State, he brought the heat, and the defense got off the field and allowed the offense to, come up with 24 points. Well, 7 of those were Ryan Niblett on special teams. But your thoughts on the defense's performance?
2 quick things. One, you asked if I had anything else on the offense. Would like to see Jack Andrews get a little bit more involved. Steve praised him as a pass blocker, and I'm sure some of that is just with the pressure Arch Manning is taking, right? You need all bodies in there to try to protect, but would like to see Jack Andrews more involved here down the stretch, if you can, while also protecting Arch Manning. I laughed when you mentioned PK, Chip, because we've talked about him and his stated lack of desire to be a head coach. Chip, and all the madness of Steve Sarkisian coming off the bus and getting video of him and Arch and the players, PK literally just walked right behind me, like so unassuming. It's like, oh, there's PK. I probably should get a shot at him, right? Like, you could tell he thrives in the relative anonymity that he lives in compared to all of the madness. That just was a funny juxtaposition, right? People going wild for Arch, people going wild for everyone else. Steve coming off the bus, and PK literally just walked right behind me. I'm like, oh, it's PK. That aside, to your point, I do think he is recognizing that there are more opportunities to bring the pressure. Mississippi State was probably one of the games that it felt more noticeable or most noticeable to fans and those of us alike because of just how demonstrated it was, how often it was, when it happened. It was timely blitzes. Because I went back and looked at the numbers. I'm sorry, I don't have the publication off the top of my head. I will try and credit it in the future. There's a publication that tracked the blitz percentage and said that PK against Florida actually blitzed higher than his usual rate, but still wasn't a ton, right? I think to Chip's point, the point that he would make is Saturday is what you would have wanted against Florida, right? Maybe the outcome of that game is different if it's what we saw on Saturday, right? Especially against a hobbled quarterback. Can't cry over spilled milk. It's done. But to your point, yes, it was noticeable, the blitz pressure packages that came out on Saturday. So many guys, Chip, I won't, go on a tangent too long, but Ethan Burke, someone you have banged the drum for since I've been here, 3 years, had a hell of a game. Lance Jackson is coming on, Chip. Like, that guy is someone who, if Texas can find the depth at not just edge, but defense across the whole, I think that's going to be huge to Texas's chances of trying to make this late season push and again make an SEC title game and again make a college football playoff. Because you talked about it, Ryan Niblett getting the punt return. I think as this offense tries to figure things out, and we are now in week 9, week 10, they're trying to figure things out. You're going to need maybe a Ryan Niblett touchdown, maybe a kick return touchdown, Chip, maybe just fundamental plays on special teams. An Ethan Burke blocked field goal, Marshall Landwehr, the block on Ryan Niblett's TD. You're going to need all those fundamental things, Chip, because this offense is still finding their footing. So that's kind of my big picture thought on the defense in relation to how this team is playing football right now.
Yeah, and good for you shouting out Marshall Landwehr, who's become Ryan Niblett's personal bodyguard on these punt returns, number 51, because the return against Mississippi State was a carbon copy of the return against Oklahoma, where Niblett stays in the left third of the field, never crosses the hash marks. And there's Marshall Landwehr as the last blocker, springing Niblett for the touchdown on both of those punt returns. The Texas defense, I've been kind of picking at this all year. Anthony Hill in coverage so much. And Pete Kwiatkowski decides I'm blitzing Anthony Hill against Mississippi State. And Anthony Hill's a monster. 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, a 4th down stop, the first 4th down stop of the game. Anthony Hill is a downhill player, Eric. I get that he can drop into coverage. That's great. It's going to be wonderful for him in the NFL next year. But I need this guy downhill. I need this. This guy is a heat-seeking missile to the football. And if you're gonna look, he's gonna spy Diego Pavia this week. He and Colin Simmons, I would imagine, because those are the two who've been spying the mobile quarterbacks all year. Those guys can close, and I need to see those guys in close proximity to the quarterback, especially a guy like Diego Pavia, who's like a fire hydrant with wheels. He's got that wrestler's neck. He's like a mini Takeo Spikes, for crying out loud.
Chip,
but
super quick, I want to ask you something on Diego. Sorry for cutting you off. I want to ask you one quickly on Diego. Texas has had a lot of success against dual threat quarterbacks, but Diego Pavia is not your average dual threat quarterback, right? He's not going to run a 4-4. Chip, who's the last guy in your mind? Is there someone that in recent memory I'm just missing that kind of resembles Diego Pavia, right? I know we talked about, some of the Kansas State quarterbacks and how, they used to, be physical, Will Howard and others, right? But it's not even Diego Pavia is not he's not Will Howard. He's not 6'3",
right.
230. He's what, you hear defensive coordinators say, slippery, right? He's not fast. Anyone just come to mind? Because
Texas had trouble with Sam Levitt. Now I think.
Okay, sure.
I think Levitt is a little faster than Pavia. Pavia is stronger. He's going to fight through arm tackles. And I do think that the Texas defense will rally. I think they'll swarm. I think they're playing a top 10 team, and it's not them. They're the home team. They're a slight favorite. You're supposed to get 3 points for being the home team, Eric. Texas is a 1.5 point favorite. So Vegas thinks Vanderbilt, this is basically a pick'em game. But I do think Texas's defense has the ability to do what Missouri's defense did to Pavia last week, which is keep him in check, buckle down in the red zone and make Vanderbilt settle for field goals. And, I think every week we pick a low scoring game with Texas, and we're probably surprised by last week's, offensive output, 24-point fourth quarter. The first time I think Texas has had a 24-point fourth quarter since 2007 against Oklahoma State in a wild comeback win. So, I in this defense, Texas trusts, but hey, nothing wrong with taking a couple chances here and there, Eric. I know you've got a good 4-man rush, but Texas over the last 3 weeks has moved now. Texas is now tied for 4th nationally in sacks. Like they're really up in the ante here. And we've certainly seen Kentucky and Mississippi State blitz with a lot of success. In fact, Mississippi State backed off. They stopped blitzing as much and started playing to keep things in front of them, and it allowed Texas to really make that comeback. So it's just a little interesting. It's a nitpick. Obviously, this Texas defense is the strength of the team. They're 3rd in the nation in run defense. That's fantastic. The passing yards allowed have gone up for sure. They're allowing 219 yards passing. And that's where I want to go next, Eric, because Michael Taft is not coming through that door. The earliest we're going to see Michael Taft is Georgia, November 15th. That's the earliest window, and that's with him probably playing with a club on his hand. But the pass defense was totally affected by Michael Taft not being in the game. There was a lot of cover 2, keep things in front of you. Guys gave up a lot underneath, a lot. Your thoughts on, what you saw from the Texas pass defense, because Texas gave up 94 yards rushing in the first half. It was minus 31 yards rushing in the second half. But the passing yards, they gave up all game long. Your thoughts?
When you look at pass defense, one of the things I always try to assess is, It's the chicken or the egg thing. Is the pass rush making the secondary, or is the secondary making the pass rush? I don't know how you felt, Chip, because again, we haven't discussed it. I thought the pass rush, and we talked about the blitzes, right? I thought it was steady throughout the game. I think obviously it picked up more in the second half. I do wonder, just thinking out loud, if styles make fights. We all know Jeff Levy comes from the Art Briles tree and the way they like to do things with kind of that up-tempo offense. Styles make fights. I wonder if just the game plan was to get the ball out of too many quarterback brains in my mind, on Blake Shapen's hands quickly, and try to take advantage of that. Because as you mentioned, a lot of those yards were underneath. Texas was playing off a little bit, right? You didn't see a ton of, and Chip, I believe that shovel pass for a TD was credited as a pass, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so we know what a shovel pass is, right? You saw that play. So
it's a great play.
Let's take that into account, right? But that was not some downfield 20-yard shot where safeties were getting beat over the top, right? So I guess that's my way of saying styles make fights, and I'm cautiously optimistic in Texas's ability to rebound, even with Michael Taft being out of the lineup against Diego Pavia. It's, again, Diego's such a hard guy to even, I can only imagine playing against him, because even trying to talk about him, he's no Peyton Manning, but count him out, and guess what? He's going to find a way to make a 35-yard throw down the field, right? He's a hard guy to even talk about, because you can sit here and say what he isn't, but when the lights are on, he somehow becomes what he is, right? But to your question, I'm still going to give Texas pass defense the benefit of the doubt. I think Manny Muhammad, is a big part of that. I think Jalen Gilble's had an up and down year. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying that, right? I was pleased with the play of Jelani McDonald. I thought he made a lot of key stops, especially he had like a back-to-back sequence where he made stops behind the line of scrimmage, forcing Mississippi State to punt, his physicality. And I thought, Chip, the play of Xavier Filsaime and Derek Williams, because both did play. Filsaime did get run, in the secondary. I thought my hope / expectation is that you wouldn't be able to circle that position and be like, hey, that's where we're going, right? I didn't see any of that in the game. Maybe you saw it differently because, again, you watched on TV, but I didn't see a clear, like, hey, draw the red circle around that spot. That's where we're attacking. Were they Michael Taft? No. But they didn't appear to be a liability in that sense, from my vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, they were attacking the middle of the field between the linebackers and the safeties, and they were getting what they wanted. You had the Brennan Thompson, beating Malik Muhammad one-on-one. And look, Brennan Thompson is a rocket. We know that. So, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see very different offense, as you pointed out. Mississippi State is going to go as fast as they can. Vanderbilt's going to huddle. They're going to grind you. They want to play, 4-guard basketball and hold the ball. And Diego Pavia has to make a lot of decisions in a nanosecond, and he does, and they're usually the right decision. So, I mean, what we're seeing from Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt reminds me, and I'm to a different level, a lesser level, but what Vince Young did for Texas. He transformed a program that used to be known as soft and not physical. Vince Young transformed Texas into a physical, dominant, just unwieldy beast to deal with. And Diego Pavia has done that. Nick Saban last week said, okay, I'm buying Vanderbilt. And everyone who's followed SEC football for the last 20 years knows that outside of James Franklin's 3 straight 9-win seasons, which was considered a minor miracle at that time, Vanderbilt has been the gum on the bottom of the shoe of the SEC. So kudos to Diego Pavia. I love watching the guy play. I mean, he's just a force and has gotten that whole team, kind of like what Cam Scadaboo was doing for the Giants. That was disheartening seeing him go down with that ankle dislocation. But I think this is going to be a great challenge. And Eric, if you're going to play 5 straight games, 4 of them on the road, and you heard Steve Sarkisian say, I have a re-energized team. Do you believe that? Or do you think he was trying to manifest that?
I think he's trying to manifest it. And listen, it may be, both two things can be true. Maybe they are energized. Not maybe. You have to be energized, coming back from 17 points down and winning the way you did, right? And Chip, you were there on Monday. I think we saw a little bit of that from the guys we spoke to about, kind of their confidence coming in, smiles and things of that nature. Even post game, the guys came in all, cheery. I think a measure of that is true, but no one's going to tell me that the 4 straight weeks didn't take a toll on them. I told this story to someone yesterday at the stadium. Chip, my last year covering Florida International, there was a 3-game road stretch where we went to UTEP, to New Mexico State, and to Western Kentucky. I didn't take one snap. I just had to go cover the game. I was exhausted getting on those planes 3 straight weeks, right? We can't act like it doesn't take a toll on you. So, and those were, those games, those being Texas's games, not the games I had to cover. They had to grind out some wins. They had to, emotional game against Oklahoma State. Had to grind out Oklahoma State against Oklahoma, had to grind out the win against Kentucky, grind out the win against Mississippi State. It wasn't like, they were all Sam Houston, no disrespect to Sam Houston, right? There were no games where, all right, guys, your starter's going to play 30, 40 snaps and we'll get the backups in. No, they had to go. And we know what Florida was. Florida took a toll on guys as well. So Chip, I obviously have no rooting interest, but if I did, I would have rather the first game back from this trip be Arkansas than a Vandy team that's coming in extremely confident. And as you said, looking to be physical, led by a guy who is just a sheer force of nature. So yeah, that's my answer there. And I'll just emphasize what you talk about as far as Diego Pavia. I don't think you have to couch it. It may be not the same level because Vince Young won a national title, but I grew up in SEC territory. You think the old ball coach at Florida had his quips for Texas, and I don't know why he is loving picking on Texas these days, but I digress. He had him weekly for Vanderbilt, right? So no, what Diego Pavia is doing there, that's incredible. And that can't be understated as we're previewing this game, because it's just a team that believes, Chip, and to tie it all the way around, that's where if there was a measure of an increased energy level, you're going to need it on Saturday, because it's a motivated team they're playing that just believes, led by that guy.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, Texas got smacked in the face by Florida. They had to come back and play an undefeated at that time Oklahoma team, and Texas locked in a way that we really haven't seen before or since. So is this a number 9 ranked team with a Heisman Trophy candidate coming into your house? Is that going to be what wakes this team up and maybe ignites something offensively, the way that things have ignited for the Texas defense and Ryan Niblett the last few games? Eric, let's talk a little Texas men's basketball before we get to take it or leave it. You have spent time with Sean Miller and this team. The schedule is daunting. You open with Duke in Charlotte. Your thoughts?
Chip, I'm cautiously optimistic. Let's start with the optimism, then I'll get to, some of the things that could, or question marks. I'll say question marks around this team. I think the starting 5 is going to be good, Chip. And I'm writing a piece right now. It'll be up later this week on the site where I'm projecting the starting 5. I think you're looking at, and Chip, you are sitting down, so I can't say, are you sitting down, but brace yourself. Jordan Pope. Okay. We all know Chip had his feelings with last year's version of Jordan Pope. Jordan Pope, Tremont Mark, Simeon Wilcher, Dalen Swain, and Modest Vocatitis, because those guys have all started, right? As much as we've heard about the improvement of Kendall Weaver, his entire career, at least at, not the mid-major level, he's been a reserve, right? Tremont Mark, proven 15, 16, 17-point scorer in the SEC. Simeon Wilcher started on a really good St. John's team last year. Jordan Pope, all right, maybe he hasn't done it for a good team because those teams he played in Oregon State weren't good, but he did lead Oregon State back-to-back years in scoring. Dalen Swain, Texas fans, you shouldn't need a reminder as to what he was. You saw him the last time Texas basketball took the court in Dayton, Ohio. And Modest Vocatitis, while in his own words, it's an adjustment in terms of the physicality going from Florida Atlantic and the American to the SEC. Chip, he's every bit of 7 foot 250. Okay, so you got a legit 7-footer down low. I think the starting five is going to be good. The bench is where
my guys, Camden Heide and Lucina Traore.
Okay, so in projecting this, I'm glad you mentioned that. In projecting the starting five, I'm torn because I think Cam Heide at the 4 could be a way to go. I just am looking at the guys who have started, and I wonder, Chip, and I'd be curious your thoughts. Do you get Simeon Wilcher here and say, hey, you started 26 games for a St. John's team that made the Sweet 16 last year, I believe? They come off the bench. Hey, Modest, you were a starter last year, American Athletic Conference Freshman of the Year, come off the bench. With Lucina, the only reason why I'm a little bit iffy is, remember, he's coming off the ACL injury. Now he's fully cleared, but the last time he was a double-double guy, it was in the Big West at Long Beach State, okay? That's still an adjustment to the SEC. And even he's listed at 6'9". I think he's bigger than 6'9", to be honest. I just do. He's a big dude.
And he plays physical.
He plays big, plays physical, right? Which matters, right? All size ain't created equal. I don't want to mention any names. I'll mention when to chip off here, and we'll both agree. He plays physical, right? But I just think those guys, because you brought in Swain, he's going to start. Like, that's not even a question. Are you able to convince Simeon Wilcher, hey, come to Texas, but you're going to come off the bench after you were at a legit contender in St. John's? I don't know. Tremont, I feel like, has to be in the starting lineup because of his pedigree, right? So I guess the wild card is Jordan Pope. But yeah,
I like Pope coming off the bench. I would think. Where would you put he gives you some juice off the bench. So, and Kendall Weaver coming off the bench. I mean,
okay, so if you go Pope and Kendall off the bench, like, who would be your starting five? I'm just curious.
I would go with Wilcher, Tremont Mark, Camden Heide, Dalen Swain, and Lucina Traore.
Okay.
And I'm going to bring, Matas off the bench, younger guy. Lucina's a grizzled, tough, attitude guy down low. Need that. I like Kendall Weaver a lot. He gives you, defensive presence, and we're waiting for this offense to come because we know he, as a freshman, shot 40% from 3. That would be my gut. Wilcher, Tremont Mark, Camden Heide, because Heide is going to be a tough mismatch for people at 6'7" out on the perimeter, and he can shoot it.
Yeah.
And then, Dalen Swain and Lucina Traore, and then, give me Pope, Kendall Weaver, and Matas coming in off the bench.
And, listen, we'll see how it plays out, but I think to transition to the bench, right now this feels like an 8, maybe 9-man rotation. I think Nick Cody's put on some weight. Okay. Remember when Nick Cody was coming out of high school, he suffered the injury at Newman, Carlton Newman, right? So didn't have an off season. He's put in some time in the weight room. So I think Nick Cody's probably that 9th guy, but Declan Daru, that's a project, Lewis, the British kid, I'm forgetting how to pronounce his last name, but he's a project, right? So yeah, I think the bench is where it gets interesting. To your point, listen, I was in favor of Jordan Pope possibly making a move to the bench last year when it was clear it wasn't working, right? But I do, call me stubborn, I just think with a more offensive-minded coach and an up-tempo system, I think Jordan Pope has, and quite frankly, better defensive plays. He needs to be better on defense. He has to be, right? I think there's an opportunity for him to kind of evolve and maybe not be a 17-point scorer because this is a better team. Again, his teams at Oregon State weren't good, but a 12, 13-point scorer with better ball distribution, I think there's opportunities for him there. But Chip, we're going to find out really quickly what you have, right? Going against Duke. You got the Boozer boys there, and they both are studs. They both are studs. They played last night. Go ahead, Chip.
Yeah, they both are studs. And one of them's more of a stud than the other.
Yes. But you're going to find out really quick what you have playing Duke in Charlotte. That's going to be a home game, right? Spectrum Center. So I'm fired up to cover that one.
How are we not playing this game at Cameron Indoor? I mean, I've always wanted to cover a game at Cameron Indoor, and as soon as I saw this was a neutral site game, I was like, come on, man. But yeah, I want to go to Cameron Indoor. How do we get that to happen, Eric?
Cameron Indoor. I want to go to the Dean Dome, UNC. At least I'll make the trip to UConn. To XL Center, not necessarily known in the same realm as Cameron Indoor, but obviously UConn has won titles playing at that home arena. So yeah, no, it's a good question. And also, Chip, how does Texas get some of these games at home? How about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna play. Well, you're going out to Maui,
right?
I mean, they get Virginia at home.
That's the marquee one. That's it.
Right. Then Connecticut on the road. Yeah, and then we're into SEC play. So yeah, this is gonna be a fun team to watch. I'm super high on Camden Heide, and feel like that was an unbelievable get for Sean Miller, because that guy knows what he's doing. Like, he's a calming influence on the floor. He's got ups. He's a putback dunk guy. He can shoot the three. I think he can defend. I mean, he played for Matt Painter at Purdue. He's been in a national championship game. So I think this guy is like the X factor for Texas basketball this year, but we'll see. Got an exciting season ahead in year one under Sean Miller. In the Texas women,
yes,
the injury to Ashton Judd is a blow, because she's the transfer from Missouri, 6'1", tough, can shoot it, physical, and so we'll have to see how long she's out. It's not like they're destitute. They've got, Madison Booker and Rory Harmon, and the transfer from Boston College, who's got some quicks, and of course, Kyla Oldacre down low, and Brea Cunningham, who they brought in from Arizona. So
Jordan Lee as well.
Yeah, Jordan Lee's ready to take the next step. Brianna Preston, Justice Carlton, and Aaliyah Crump, the five-star freshman who Vic says she can shoot it. So, and they brought in the Prentice gal from Ireland, who's a spot-up three-point shooter. So Vic trying to make sure he's got some outside shooting to go with mid-range Maddie Booker. So yeah, going to be fun, going to be exciting watching Texas basketball. And of course, Texas volleyball just keeps rolling. Eric, with Texas volleyball, you just hope they're not peaking too soon, because they're playing so well. And if they can just keep building, then this team will be a Final Four contender, maybe a national championship contender. I know that everyone's like, well, of course they're a national champion. I know, just it's a long season, and you got to be peaking at the right time. All right, Eric, you ready for some take it or leave it?
I am ready after this break, Chip. We'll come back and take it or leave it, all right?
We'll come right back with some take it or leave it. Don't go anywhere. You are watching and listening to the Flagship Podcast. Welcome back to the Flagship Podcast. It is time for Take It or Leave It. Eric, can you give us an update on how we fared last week?
Yes. Chip Brown is in the lead, and he is still in the lead because we had a 2-1 week, both of us. The rare time we all take everything. The three questions were, Texas scores at least 20 points Saturday at Mississippi State. We both felt Texas had to break out and do something, or else they were going to lose. It looked for a long time, Chip, like, we might be wrong, but they broke out. So we both took that. We were correct. Arch Manning throws for less than 200 yards at Mississippi State. I think both of us thought the run game would be able to get off on a Mississippi State run defense that's been so-so. So we took Arch throwing for less than 200. He obviously cleared 200. So that was an L for us. And Colin Simmons gets at least one sack. We both took that. So that puts us at 2-1 on the day. And now, Chip, heading into this week, you will kick it off to me. Take or leave it, number one.
All right, take it or leave it, number one. Ryan Niblett, Nib, as they call him, will have a punt return of at least 40 yards on Saturday against Vanderbilt. Eric, take it or leave it.
Chip, I'm going to leave this one. I think teams are not going to be kicking the ball to Ryan Niblett. And I mentioned this in the post game. I thought Mississippi State's punter didn't have a choice, right? If you try to, do kind of a kick out of bounds, or you try to get some hang time on it, maybe you're giving Texas a short field, trying to flip the field. I thought he had no choice but to try and boom it. We saw what happened. I think teams are going to say, hey, fair enough, take the short field. We're not going to let that guy beat us again. So I am leaving this, Chip. What says you?
Yeah, I thought it might run out last week, but yeah, teams can't keep subjecting themselves to this. So I agree. I'm going to leave this. I think he may have a punt return of 20 or 30. I don't know that he gets the 40-yarder. So I too will leave this. All right, take it or leave it, number two.
Take it or leave it, number two. And super quick, I misspoke. It was a 1-2 week for us. I said 2-1. Of course, Colin did not get a sack. So I apologize for misspeaking there as well. As I said 2-1, not 1-2. Either way, number's still the same. Chip's still in the lead. Take it or leave it, number two. Texas's defense will force at least one turnover by Diego Pavia on Saturday. Take it or leave it, Chip.
I'm going to take this. For Texas to win this game, I think they're going to have to force at least one turnover, either a fumble or an interception by Diego Pavia. So I'm going to take this. Eric, what say you?
I'm going to take this as well. I think this defense, if Texas is going to win the game, and we haven't got to the point of predictions just yet, they'll be out on the site later in the week. But if Texas is going to win this game, they are going to force at least one turnover. And so much of the offense run through Diego Pavia, whether it's a pick or a fumble, and Texas has forced a fair amount of fumbles as of late. I can see them recovering one. So no scoop and score, Anthony Hill. Just fall on it. I'm taking it.
Okay. Take it or leave it, number three. All right. Eric, Texas men's basketball will reach the Sweet 16 in year one under Sean Miller. Take it or leave it.
Chip, the rare Kevin Ryan shout out on the podcast. I told him, our boss, that I felt the ceiling for Texas was the Sweet 16, but that I felt a little more confidence in a round of 32 team in year one. So I am leaving it. I think there'll be round of 32.
Okay. All right. You know what? Just to be a contrarian, in my strong belief in Cam Heide, I will take this, even though it's probably a little bit of a, probably not so smart decision. What the heck? Cam Heide to the Sweet 16. I will take it. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Flagship Podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Horns247 YouTube channel. Please become an annual member at horns247.com. Until next time, probably after the Texas Vanderbilt game. For Eric Henry, I'm Chip Brown. Stay safe and keep the faith.